record. Okay. And Mark, can you just confirm we're recording?
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay, great. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is our third Lifeboat Strategies session with Marc Barrington. And today you are in for a lot of great high quality professional development. We're going to talk a little bit about some basic principles of setting up your online class for the first 2 weeks. And then Marc is going to show you how he embodies some of these principles in his online course. So Marc, thank you so much for doing that today. And before we begin, I'm just going to escape out and I'm going to show you so here is a link that has all of our Lifeboat Strategies session materials, and I'm just about to post this to the chat. And it's a little clunky trying to do this on my screen while I am doing this, but I'm just going to post it to the chat right now. So the link that I just posted to the chat will take you to our session materials, and I want to show you all a specific resource, which is our Student Success Center COVID-19 remote learning resources. And I also want to make sure before Marc begins that you know how to access the handout. So if everybody could just take a quick minute to go to the chat and make sure that you can see that link to the resource. This has the Student Success Center COVID-19. We tried really hard to make a one-stop shop for everyone to go to, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. There's also a link to a handout for today for Marc's session. So what we noticed is that a lot of people were asking sort of how-to questions, and Marc has a really great handout to share with you that kind of explains how to do some of these things. So if you have that open, or if you just know that's there, so I think that's what I wanted to say about that. Marc, do you have anything to add about the handout?
No, just that I hope to go through it sort of in the order that it's presented, but the headings are links to either YouTube videos or instructions for how to achieve the ideas that I sort of contextualize below the headings. I provide sort of some context and some reasoning behind why you might do this or that, but then the header itself is a link to basic instructions on how to do it.
Perfect. And I'm just showing everybody this document. So again, there's just one link in the chat, and that link will take you to all of these resources. It also has a link to the slide deck from this session with Marc, and there's also a link to there's also links to recordings from some of our other Lifeboat sessions. We've been doing a STEM specific version and chats, and then there's other information in this document, but I wanted to make sure everybody had this link. And I do want to just take one moment to show you all the new Student Success Center website. So again, professional development lives in a lot of areas, and oh, I see what I was doing. Okay, I was like, why isn't this working? Professional development lives in a lot of areas, and so what we've tried to do is make a one-stop shop for all faculty to go to that has as much information in it as possible. This has all been curated. So you can see here there's general resources. Instruction is coming. We're vetting them right now so that we're making sure they're really high quality. There's links for dual enrollment, advising and counseling, accessibility, financial aid, FERPA. But the one I wanted to show this group is the resources for online teaching. And if you go to the Canvas, so if you click on online teaching, it'll take you to all of our professional development on Canvas. Because I know that from these previous sessions, there's a lot of people who are new to Canvas. So you can see here, we have a lot of professional development around how to share your course to the Canvas Commons, questions about OER. We're having a lot of OER labs for people who want to use online resources during this time. Also, Alyssa Sells, who is our e-learning professional developer, This is a place for you to, this is an open lab for online course design, and it's specifically for tech questions. So if you have tech questions today, feel free to type them into the chat and we will do our best to answer them. But I also wanted to say, if you're looking for like really hands-on, like how do I use Canvas, we have a lot of professional development in our open our OER labs. So I just wanted to just cover those basic resources with everyone. And now I am going to go over to our slide deck, and I'll just, oh, I don't want to share it. I want to present. And so a lot of you have been typing into the chat, what's your current comfort level on teaching online? And do you have a strategy for teaching online that you'd like to share? And Mark, I'm just wondering if before we move any further, while people are typing into the chat if they haven't had a chance, is there anything else that you think is worth drawing out for the group to the collective attention?
Um, I just want to echo that. I'll echo again what I said earlier. Now that more people are here, is that someone sort of stated, and I might not get this right. That I'm not comfortable teaching online. And the fact is, I don't necessarily think that I'm comfortable teaching online either, because it seems so alien to us as instructors. I think we all crave and want to be face to face and have that experience with our students. So I don't think of myself as being comfortable teaching online either. It does seem very alien to me, but I think that we could all sort of develop some strategies to be more proficient and or comfortable with what we have to do this quarter, and maybe even in the fall.
Mark, thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for your honesty too. I think it's really, yeah, thank you. Okay, so today, Marc Barrington, who is English faculty at Green River, and he will talk a little bit about his experience, kind of learning instructional design through helping other faculty. Mark is one of my favorite faculty members. We've known each other for a really long time, and we met back when I was English faculty at Green River and Mark was working in the publishing industry, and we just had one of those really great break room conversations. There was actually literally a water cooler in the room, and those are the best conversations. And I just remember thinking like, wow, what a really smart, caring, compassionate, brilliant man. And over the years, he's held a lot of different positions in our system and outside of it. Lots of amazing teaching experience. And Mark, I just want to say that I'm so grateful to you for stepping into the void of professional development. I've never tried to offer professional development in a pandemic before. And without you doing this, I still think I wouldn't know. So I'm just really grateful to you for stepping into this space and showing me how to do this.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, is there anything about your bio that you want to highlight before we begin?
Just that I had a career before teaching. I was in textbook publishing and did that for 10 years, and made the switch by first volunteering at the Washington State Reformatory in Monroe. And so I had experience in training. I had experience in training to teach prior to the publishing career, but I initially began by volunteering, and then I was teaching part-time at South Seattle College, where I also worked in the Teaching and Learning Center. And I knew right away, my mom had sort of taught in the California system, and she was a big believer in learning strategies to teach online and teaching online as well. And so I immediately gravitated towards that, because I like to sort of pair my classes, or at least augment my classes with online learning, because I think of Canvas or whatever system we're using as a way to sort of keep students sort of inside a relative or figurative sort of fence when they're doing their learning outside of class. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Mark, thank you. So today, one of the things that we really wanted was just a time for 100 people to come online to Zoom together and just recognize that you're not alone. This is a great time to meet other people virtually and talk to each other. So please feel free to type anything you want into the chat as long as it's appropriate. Um, and this is a great time to, like, people feel free, if someone asks a question and you know the answer or you have an answer, please offer any insights and experience, and I will make the chat available after this session. And one thing that I really hope that you leave with is hope that you can do this, and also that this might not be as bad as you thought, that it might actually be amazing. And and I'm always excited when I see people who are like, I'm excited about teaching online. I'm nervous, but I'm excited. And so I hope that you leave, maybe if you still feel nervous, that you also feel excited. And we also want to provide you with some very simple, we're calling them lifeboat strategies for just getting you up and running. Uh, so we've got two core themes here. And Marc, do you want to talk about relational trust, or just how building and fostering trust is a general theme?
Well, I'll just think of it in terms of my students, that I tend to want to demonstrate to my students that that I'm human, and so I do my best to sort of practice humility in front of them, and let them see that and to also sort of ask for their feedback. And I let them know early on in the quarter, both online and face-to-face, that I'm willing to sort of shift and adjust my curriculum to meet the needs of my students, because the needs of my students change from quarter to quarter and from student to student. And I think that leads to me having good relationships with my students.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you. And I guess the other thing that I just wanted to add about trust is that trust is transactional. And so as you are designing your course, be thinking about, like, will this move that I make either create trust or will it break it down? And so one example that I always use is, if I say, I'm going to be available to you online between 1 to 2 p.m., and then I show up for that, that's an example of trust being transactional. Whereas if I said, okay, I'll be there at 1 o'clock and then I'm not there, that can break down trust. So again, as you are, everything that Marc is going to show you today is really about fostering trust with your students through being clear, being present, and we'll talk more about that. The other theme is to aim for low stakes and high impact activities, and we're going to do a little discussion of that in a moment. I wanted to give you this quote. So we'll just start with low stakes, high impact. And so what I'd like you to just do is type your response into the chat. When I say, if you are thinking about activities that are low stakes and high impact, what does that mean to you? So just take a second and just type what that term means to you in the chat. And Marc and I will read through your responses and just pull out a couple highlights. Mandy Edwards writes, activities that are meaningful, that every student can be successful in completing. Mandy, that's great. Thank you. And Marc, feel free to jump in as you
So
see a good one.
John Jaffe, a low weight in course grade, but they're going by so quickly. Low weight in course grade, but very educational.
That's a great one.
Or Sharon says, practice activities before graded activities.
That's great. I love that one. I like the one above that one too from Suki. Lots of learning activity without the stress of earning points. There's another one here too from Amy, high impact meets the learning outcomes. Yes, absolutely. Will wrote high impact work that impacts learning outcomes directly. Absolutely. And, and again, Jennifer Lawson, low point value, but high learning value. Absolutely. And Joseph, this is a really beautiful one. Little risk for failure, high potential for learning. So again,
That's great.
yeah, isn't that great? So there's lots of practitioner wisdom in here. Mark, anything else that you want to bring out?
No, just that I appreciate people's input, because that some of those definitions and responses are powerful, and I appreciate reading them.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. So we wanted to just say that we know that for certain disciplines, you might not want to use Canvas as your learning management system. But we are going to urge you to choose Canvas as your learning management system. And the reason why is because your students are going to be incredibly overwhelmed this quarter, especially for the students who didn't plan on taking anything online. And so if you choose Canvas, it does allow students just one click and you're into all your coursework. There's lots and lots of tech support from your e-learning directors and from the state board. And there's also lots of resources. There's Canvas guides, there's Canvas community, and there's Canvas Commons. And Mark is going to be showing you a lot of this. And then I will also be directing you to some of these resources based on what shows up in the chat. Mark, anything else that you want to say about this?
No, just that I'm going to do my best to sort of keep it sort of low stakes and it's fairly simple. But what I think of as simple these days might be complex to others, and I'm thinking about how I struggle sometimes to differentiate my teaching in a class, in a pre-college class I teach, where I have a lot of English language learners and then some domestic students, and the range of skills, experience, and backgrounds is huge. And I know that's going to be the same today. So hopefully you'll be able to take away one or two things that will make your class stronger and or better. But just also know that most everything I show you is, and beyond, basically everyone has an answer for, or there are answers for almost everything to do in Canvas. And a quick Google search usually pulls up a really instructional video that's like less than 5 minutes long, or a set of enumerated instructions that come from like the Canvas learning communities that usually help me figure out how to do something. So I really believe in Googling questions and finding answers for Canvas issues.
Mark, thank you so much. So we are going to start the sort of more hands-on portion of this presentation. And so Mark, I'm going to invite you to share your screen and I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. So I'm going to begin by sharing my dashboard. See if I can make it a little bit bigger. So the dashboard is what we and our students see when they first sort of land at Canvas. And something that I learned from my colleague Ariadne Rudny a couple quarters ago was how I can create an image behind what they call course cards. I used to think of these as tiles, like various courses, but I guess they're called course cards. And so my English 126 is a sort of a second quarter composition class that I've created an image for, and I've created an image for my Reading 104. And to do that, it's fairly straightforward. If your Canvas system on campus allows you to do so, you can simply open your course, jump down to settings, go to the course details, and it'll say choose an image. And you can either find an image online or have an image already downloaded, which I do. You can click upload image, and I'm going to search for one that I've used before. It's called old. And this is my reading and writing. I think this is a reading and writing class. And so I've got this sort of heart-shaped made out of the pages of an old Bible, which I thought might sort of influence my students to love reading, but maybe not. And so then I go back to the dashboard, and then what students will see is an image. And I think this, this is not, I don't know if this is pedagogically sound necessarily, but I think that it can reflect the discipline, the content, or the theme of the class, and it makes your class stand out among others. Your students this quarter will be taking all of their classes online. If they're taking multiple classes, I think they will appreciate seeing something beyond just a colored card or tile. And so I just think it makes it more appealing. So And I'm going to go into my English 126 course, which I've sort of been working on the most this week. As an instructor, I get to sort of see all the possible course navigation on the left-hand side. I tend to want to reduce the course navigation. And so if I click student view, we'll see what a student sees. And this is still kind of a lot. So I have modules where I build most of my class. I just basically have students go straight to the modules, and I sequence it by weeks. There's also a direct link to online discussions. There's a link to grades. I always have a link to the syllabus. I probably will take the conference link off because I'm going to do conferences differently. And then what follows is a number of links that Green River provides, two of which I've added using a tool that I explain on my document, which I won't go into great detail about, but Green River provides what they call Green River Virtual Assistants. So if I click on this link that I've added, it brings that Green River page into Canvas itself. So students can navigate this content without kind of like leaving Canvas, if you will, which I think might be helpful for them. And then I also, because I'm going to be doing a lot with the Green River Reading and Writing Center, I created a link in the navigation to their resource, which is where students can come and basically sign up for online reading and writing tutoring. And so those links are, it's fairly easy to add that to the navigation if your campus allows you. It involves adding what's called an app. I think they're also called LTIs. And I'm going to go to settings again and jump to apps right here. So here's course details where I have the image. Navigation is where I can choose what students see or not. So I can drag some of these, let's say I want to drag conferences out of the view of students. And then we have apps. And so I use an app called, it's actually, so it's called Redirect. And it allows for you to change the way you can navigate content in Canvas. And it's fairly straightforward, but the instructions are on the document. So I won't go into those now. So if I return to home and student view, looks like I didn't take the conferences off. So let me just demonstrate doing that correctly. So I'm going to just quickly go to settings, navigation, and I'm going to take conferences and move them out of the view of students. And then I'm going to click save. And if I go back to home and back to student view, they don't see the conferences. So there's fewer places for students to navigate, which I think might just be helpful and alleviate whatever anxiety they have. And on that note, I tend to want students to do all of their work in the modules. I want them to follow the sequence of assignments and activities that I design per week, which I'll show you in a second. But students will also just land on the home page and find to do on the right-hand side of their page, where they'll, where I've got my first assignments, such as upload a profile picture, class introductions, read and discuss, listen and discuss. So those are other ways that students will access their content. Excuse me. I also like to have a home page, and so having a home page simply means that you designate a home page. So you have, as an instructor, you have access to the pages, and you basically can design a page. You can basically click page, and you can have a welcome note. I'm going to spell it. I won't spell. And you can have some instructions for students on that home page where students are going to land, and you can save that. Oh, I have to enter a title. And now you've created a page. It's a very minimal page, but it's a page nonetheless. And then you simply can find a page that you want to make your home page, and if you run your mouse over the three dots, you can say use as front page. So my home page, I've included a picture of a prison tier, because this is a class about prison literature, and I wanted something that might grab their attention. And I have a brief intro where I say, welcome to English 126. And I ask them directly to navigate to the modules where, on the left-hand side, where they're going to sort of participate in activities, assignments, and additional resources are organized. I also like to be very, very transparent about my values And so I provide links to organizations that reflect my values, and I think serve some of my students well when they can potentially identify me as an ally, because I do my best to behave as an ally in all of my interactions with my students. And I have additional content that I put into my syllabus to reflect that. But I have a link to Black Lives Matter, the National Organization for Women, and Equal Rights Washington. So students can click on these links and find information. And surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, it doesn't always come up a lot. I don't call these out boldly in my class necessarily. They're just there. But I have had students sort of tell me, hey, I'm glad that you had, say the Black Lives Matter on your homepage. It meant a lot to me. Or in particular, I have a number of international students ask me questions about these links, and then I can have opportunities to have conversations with students about the issues that they raise. And how do I do that? So if I go to edit the page, when I'm inside this sort of edit your page, I create a table, and I give that table 3 squares, and then I find an image for Black Lives Matter. I found an image online for National Organization for Women. I found an image for Equal Rights Washington, and then I basically take that image and I link it to something. I link it to the website. And so I find, if I highlight the image, and then I right here. I just click link to URL, Black Lives Matter, and then it becomes live. And then when I click publish or save, students can then go to that site. But it just helps to basically sort of make my values visible to students right off the bat. Jen, will you let me know if there are any questions as we go?
I will. I think people are having some great discussions in the chat, and but I don't see anything that's directly related to what you're saying. I think it's about other things. So just keep going.
And the other thing to note about this image and the text, I also have an instructions on how to wrap text around an image, and this is more just for sort of cleaner design, if you will. And it involves sort of putting in a little bit of code. When you edit a page, you have the option of clicking HTML editor, and I don't know HTML necessarily, but I can click HTML editor, add the links that I need to in order to have the text wrap around the sort of the image more smoothly, and then it sort of makes it look more attractive. But that's probably more for me than my students. I don't think my students are going to be like, oh, he didn't wrap the text around the image as I would have liked him to. But I think it just makes it look better.
Hey, Mark, we do have a follow-up question from Jill Widner, and she said, I see how to create a new page and click use as front page, but how do you find it? Where did it go?
Okay, so if you want to go to, that's a good question. So if we go to pages, excuse me, I can view all my pages, and I've got a number. So I've got a number of pages, and pages are purely pages. When we create assignments, they don't live here. These are just pages where we provide information. And so I've made this the home page, my home page. And then if I go back to home, I have to click choose home page. So when I arrive at the landing page for this particular class, I have to click choose home page. And I can choose either course modules, the assignments list, the syllabus, or pages front page. And that is the page I've designated as home page. That's a really good question. I should have touched on that in the last 2 sessions. And I prefer page rather than modules. I like them to sort of be able to read a brief intro rather than jumping right into the material. But that's my choice. I see other classes organized differently.
Yeah, Mark, and I just wanted to say to Jill, thank you for asking that question. And Mark, thanks for answering it. And also some of the things that we're going to show you are a matter of kind of instructor preference. And so sometimes there isn't a right way to do it. There's just kind of like different ways that you can experiment and see what works for you and your students. So Mark, we do have one follow-up question from Jill. Does it appear above the modules is it different from announcements?
The
And
front
someone
page?
else, yeah.
Yeah. No, the front page will just be that. Like if I'm going to click to student view now. And so this is what students see when they arrive at my page, and I give them instructions to go to modules. So if we go to modules, um, we're just going to see what I've put on the modules page, if you will. Um, and so modules are ways for us to organize our instruction and our content for students. And so what I start with is a making the most of Canvas, and this is available to you all, and I put it up on Canvas Commons, and I'll show us how to get that. But I provide basically 6 different pages that provide brief videos and instruction on how to navigate Canvas effectively, how to upload profile pictures, how to update notifications. And this is really critical for students. You can do a lot with this. Students can receive emails and or texts to turn in an assignment in the form of reminders. They can get emails or texts when an instructor provides a grade. And I know that students are using this because after I post a grade, I get immediate, "Dear Mark, why did I get 89 out of or whatever the question? Why did I get 23 out of 24, not 24 out of 24 on my essay?" Or, "Hey Mark, thanks for grading it." So I know I get immediate feedback from students because they are setting these notifications. So this is a useful one. And then I always encourage students, even in the hybrid, to have an image, but in the online class, I'm going to again ask students to provide a profile picture because it makes discussions, I think, more valuable when we can sort of see images of each other.
Mark, thank you so much. And Will is asking if you change your homepage during the quarter, or is it static for the term?
It's
And
actually
yeah,
static. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
it is a good question. And Sharon also had something to contribute. She said, I sometimes have a welcome page for the first 3 weeks, and then I
Mm,
switch to view course stream for the rest of the quarter.
that's a good idea. I'm going to make a note of that.
Me too. That's a
Thank you.
great idea. Yeah. I was going to say to folks that I saw some discussion in the chat about going straight to modules or activities. And that is obviously for overwhelmed and stressed out students. That's a great choice because they can go straight to exactly what they need. But I also think one thing to just consider is that when you have a welcome page, it's literally that. It's a welcome page, and it's a really important part, I think, of trust building. And like welcome, I'm glad you're here. Like it's a way to give a sense of identity to your course and to yourself as an instructor. Mark, I know, Mark, you've already said this, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate that there is a purpose to having a welcome page.
Yeah, no, I'd second that. My daughter is a freshman at UW, and she's home with us this quarter out of the dorms. And I looked over her shoulder at an English class she's taking, and I was really impressed with the design of this class. So I want to go back and look at it. And I think they do something different there. I don't think they have sort of the homepage the way I have it. They have a number of links on their homepage to different sources, and that can work also. I've always it might even be old school. I'm not sure, but I like to have a homepage where I welcome students, and then sort of have the bulk of the work be in modules. And you'll find that students navigate our courses differently. They may cease to ever visit the homepage, which might make more sense than to have the course stream. And they might not even navigate to the modules necessarily, which I'm going to have to remind them to do because some of the work inside the modules is going to not necessarily be for points, but it'll help guide them through the sequence of material that I'm having them go through. So that's something to consider also. So let me share how I can show you where to get making the most of Canvas. So if you go to, I'm going to leave student view for a second. When you're at your course page, you can go to import from Commons. It's on the right-hand side. And if you search for making the most of Canvas, you'll see it right here. It's the first that comes up. My name is attached. Got some downloads. If I click making the most of Canvas, you can see that it's broken up into the various pages. So if you already have some content, you just want to sort of maybe just have a few of these pages, you can sort of select which ones you want. or you can simply click import download. And what's nice is if you're teaching multiple classes this quarter, you can have them go to as many courses as you want. You just sort of check the course that you want them to go to, and then I think you click import, or sorry, then you click download. Oh, sorry, import into course. Import into course is easier than downloading. It just goes right to the class rather than downloading it to your computer. So I recommend just clicking a course, clicking import, and then it will arrive and it will appear in your modules. I have the option of making this requirement. I have the option of sort of saying that students have to sort of work through each of these pages before they get to week one, but many of my students signed up for my class when it was a hybrid, and so I think a number of them probably have some comfort with Canvas, and that includes many of my international students. I think our students are tech savvy, more so than many of us, and a lot of the moves they might make inside a Canvas course are no different than some of the moves they make in other platforms or software or apps that they use. And so I think they have a sort of a native kind of familiarity with some of it. And that's across all my classes, across all my student populations. So after making the most, I tend to want to organize by week. Typically in a class where I'm meeting them face-to-face as well, I keep my module very simply. I call it week one, but because we might lose where we are in the quarter, I'm saying here week one, and I have the dates, and then I basically sort of identify what the material is going to be for that week. And then I follow with a Welcome to English 126, and about your instructor page, and our primary text. And these are all just pages, and there's certainly might be instruction on the page, but there's nothing for students to do other than sort of read them necessarily. So I provide a brief welcome where I lay out what we're going to do this week. And it looks a little bit different than my subsequent weeks, but these are going to be graded, but I'm going to go in here and sort of preface that these are going to be low stakes, and students will not be penalized if they struggle or make missteps in doing any of these activities. It's just very, very basic and low stakes, and I'll make sure that I make that clear to students. I've been reluctant to include a lot of video in the course because I don't know what sort of bandwidth my students are going to have. So I've opted for, on my About Your Instructor page, just some photographs of me, a picture of me and my wife at the lighthouse, my family and I at a farmer's market in Ballard, and then a brief textual introduction where I sort of lay out who I am and my background, why I'm theming our course with prison literature, and ways that they can contact me throughout the quarter. I will also repeat this information on my syllabus, but as I know students are going to be working through this, I thought I would put it here as well. I've created a Google Voice number because I know that I'm not going to be in my office, and I'm not prone to want to call my office number to figure out the voicemail I'm receiving there. I will be doing it, but I'm going to give them a number through Google Voice, which is a pretty cool thing to do. And then they'll be able to access me that way as well. And I will be hosting virtual office hours, and I might use Zoom for that. And then I have a page of, about the text we'll be using this quarter. I'm going to provide them a lot of reading resources already, but these are the 4 texts we'll be using this quarter. The first one is one called Digging into Literature, which provides strategies and some theory behind literary analysis. And then I have 3 texts that we're going to cover. I provide them links to where they can get it, the campus bookstore, as well as Amazon, and a low-cost ebook version, which I use for this course. And finally, now I'm at the first assignment. And so I thought I would back out or leave the student view for a second and talk about how I organize an assignment. I tend to want to use what's called the transparency in learning and teaching strategy, which I believe came out of UNLV, out of some research at UNLV. And so I do my best to organize all of my activities around this idea of creating usually it's an overview, a purpose, a task, and then criteria for how they earn their grade. And sometimes I have fewer, but basically I always provide a sort of a purpose, which is the why. and then I have a task which I enumerate. If I'm in an assignment, so this is an assignment, I give it a title, I can give it points, I can organize my assignments into various groups, and so I have what I call in-class assignments and homework, and I need to really change the name of that and call it sort of low-stakes Canvas activities. I also used to have a participation sort of subgroup, and then I have a major writing assignments, and so those three areas are going to make up my student grades, and I'll show you where we can sort of weight each of those if you're not familiar with that. Then I can give a submission type. And in this case, this is going to be a text entry. So students will arrive at the page, they'll click submit, it'll open up a brief text box, and they'll just type an answer, then click submit. Other ways that students can upload work is through maybe a media recording. They can link to a website, or they can simply upload a file, much the way they do in other software or sites that they're on or visiting. Then I can give it a due date, and if I want, I can make it available from this date until this date. And I tend to generally not to do that. If I have a due date and it comes in after that, it does show up as late, and if I'm assigning sort of a penalty for being late, I can do so. Then I click save. So my first week, this is what I'm trying to do my first week. I'm trying to give them a sense of like some of the tools we'll use, such as using the text box, participating in the class discussion. I'm also having them interact with some Google Forms, because I'll be using Google Forms. And so what I did here is I show you how to do this in the handout I gave. I thought it might be a good idea for me to know where my students are and what they have available to them. And I just found out yesterday that many of my students in China, and I know that a number of my students will have been returning to their home countries. In China, YouTube and Google Documents may be banned unless students are accessing them through a virtual private network, a VPN. And so this might be for naught. I might have to rethink this. But here I have a survey where I ask questions. I like a Google form better than I like the survey I can create in Canvas. And on the handout that's linked in Jen's document, I provide some steps about how to basically create a Google form and embed it easily into a page or an assignment. And I just think it's it's beautiful how simple this is. Students can take the survey here. I'll see the results at my Google Drive site, and it's really straightforward. So speaking to that issue about the students outside of the U.S. not maybe having access to YouTube or Google Docs, I have raised the issue with international programs and with our instructional deans to ask whether or not they can provide instructions to students to access a virtual private network, or else I'm going to have to redesign my course and not have any YouTube videos or any Google Docs, which is going to be challenging. So within a module, I also will use what we call headers. So I will sort of click on the plus, and I can make an assignment, a quiz, a file, a page, a discussion, or a text header. And so and a text header just allows me to sort of break up the content within a module to make it easier for students to find. And so if I make that published, students will see it. And underneath that header, I might just sort of put a resource. So I have these 3 pages prior to the assignments, and then these are sequenced. I want them to upload a profile picture first, then introduce themselves to the class. Then I want them to take a brief syllabus quiz, then take the survey, and then we're going to get into some of the early stages, some of the formative or foundational work of the class. This is a prison literature class, and I want them to hear from people inside. And there's this great podcast called Ear Hustle. And I also like the idea that I can sort of make the class more dynamic by having audio and video. And so Ear Hustle is a podcast out of San Quentin that takes people inside San Quentin, and we hear from, we basically hear prison voices. So I ask them to listen to this podcast. They can listen to it right here inside the page, or they can go to a podcast provider of their choice. They're able to download the transcript it might help with comprehension if they're listening or reading the transcript while they listen. I provide them some basic questions I want them to participate in when they do the discussion, and then they can just click reply and begin to participate in the discussion. When
Mark?
I said discussion, yeah, go ahead,
Oh,
Jen.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish. And then when it's appropriate, I think there's a couple things to address in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I do discussion, I click allow threaded replies. I also always click or check users must post before seeing replies. Otherwise, I think that some of my students will mimic or copy in some way what other people have posted, and I want them to be as original as possible. And you can make a discussion ungraded or graded, and you can assign the grades, and then you can assign where you want the grades to land, whether it be in class or part of a major writing. What questions have come out of this?
Thank you so much.
Thank
So first of all,
Yeah,
I think there were some earlier questions around headers. And so
yeah,
thank you for showing people how to do that. And I think it makes, this isn't the instructional design term, but it makes everything look nice.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And I just, so there's a couple of questions about like just to go back to your technology, sir, sorry, I know you've covered the syllabus quiz, but also I think you've also covered the tech survey, is that right?
I have, yeah.
Okay, so good. Just sorry, just reading the chat and trying to monitor what's happening. So there's a question here about the difference between using Canvas for an ungraded or graded survey versus using Google Docs or Google Forms. So could you just talk a little bit about why you're using Google Forms instead of a Canvas survey, knowing that these are both viable options?
Yes, because I'm uncomfortable using Canvas surveys. I'm less familiar with them. In fact, I have one just below, I think, which is is this the survey? Oh, that's that one. So I did create a Google survey as well. Sorry, I did create a Canvas survey as well. Was it the same one? I apologize. Did I do this twice? Yeah, I have them in there twice for some reason. I did have a Canvas survey, and I think it somehow looks less. Somehow to me it seems inelegant and sort of less functional, and it just might also be my shortcoming in knowing how to navigate the. And I'm also less a fan of the syllabus or the quiz functionality in Canvas, but I have created a syllabus quiz. So
And
I
Mark,
don't have a strong or good answer for you.
that's okay. That's totally fine. I did want to say to Sharon, I think that there are some differences between using Canvas and Google Docs, Google Forms, and so there's different pros and cons. I personally use Google Forms because I like the way it shows me the data, but there's lots of different ways you could use SurveyMonkey. There's lots of different tools. So Sharon, if it's easier for you in your Canvas shell to just use to just use Canvas, I think it's really a matter of preference. There isn't like a right way to do it. Mark, there was also a question about your syllabus quiz. And
Yeah.
I think there's a question here about I've never depended on students reading a syllabus on their own. Like I'm assuming that in a face-to-face environment, there might be a syllabus activity of some sort. So how do you make sure students have read the syllabus?
Um, I have some very, very sort of specific questions in my syllabus, such as like how many points is, in the old days when I was doing more with participation, I'd say how many points is participation for, where is my office on campus, and basically it forced them to go into the syllabus and look for answers. The syllabus is there to serve as sort of a contract between us. It's my promise to them about what I'm going to teach and my promise to them about how they'll earn their grade. And I basically want them to build, I want to know that they can find information. When I do a face-to-face class, usually on the third day of the class, I will spend part of the class going over the syllabus more formally. but I still want them to know the information online. And so I create a quiz where I ask 5 to 6 questions um, that get them into looking for the answers. And it's low stakes. They can have the syllabus in front of them. They can print it and then work on the computer or have 2 windows open. I just want them to be able to sort of like find the info.
Thank you so much. And I think you are going to do this, but I think there's a request now to go see the introduce yourselves module or the assignment where students introduce themselves to each other.
Yeah, I can show that.
Thank you so much.
I also wanted to speak to the Google Forms. I did like the way I didn't like the way that when I was practicing taking the survey within Canvas, I didn't like the way that the steps it took for me to sort of be able to sort of see the results. And the Google Forms results seemed cleaner and sort of easier for me to read since I'm not a data person. Oh, and somebody asks what is a course stream, and that's a question I don't often, or I don't sort of think about it in those terms. And so somebody else might want to speak up about what they mean when they um, refer to course stream. But I think the course stream. Oh, there it is. The course stream is a choice I have. I can click View Course Stream, and it's basically the to-do list, I believe. And someone speak up if that's actually not entirely true, if there's more to it. But I think of the course stream as the list of things that are due. But it might also be information or discussions that I've posted here. So the
Yes.
course stream will just be the activity of the class.
Yes, and when you're going into Canvas, you can set your opening page on different things, and so some people I think prefer to set it to the course stream so students can kind of see what's new, what's posted, and again, I think a lot of this too, there are instructional best practices, but I think there's also areas where it's just sort of a matter of preference, and everyone could always ask their students too, what would you prefer? Would you prefer to see the welcome? Would you prefer to go straight to modules? Would you prefer to see kind of like a minute by minute update of all the things that are happening in the course through the course stream?
Right, and it looks as if, at least on my class, that in my student view, the students can sort of choose to see the course stream or the course calendar as an option. So students will have that option for themselves as well. And so the question about the discussion where students introduce themselves to each other.
Yes, and I did want to say too for folks, like when you look at the slide deck, you'll see, Mark, before you go into the introductions and the students introducing themselves, could you contextualize that with what you said at the last webinar about the UW president and the first week of courses?
Right. So yeah, as I mentioned previously, my daughter attends UW. My wife is a researcher at UW, and so we've been getting early updates from President Kause at UW, and she made the statement that the first week should be a week to establish classroom norms, should be low stakes, that perhaps students shouldn't do any major writing, that nothing would be necessarily graded. And I think that makes good sense. And so I'm playing with the idea, do I make everything sort of ungraded or complete incomplete? For now, I've sort of set up grades, but I'm going to preface it some way in that students will not lose points if they struggle with completing an activity. So I'm still sort of trying to think that through for myself.
And I
So
think
one of the things I want, yeah.
Sorry, just to bridge off of what you were just saying. I just think it's also a great time during the first week to have students get to know each other. And for those of you who are familiar with the 4 connections, having, knowing and learning your students' names is a really important way to increase students' sense of belonging and also their sense of academic confidence. But also, as the folks from Lake Washington, and I think there's a couple of them on this call today, having the students learn each other's names is also very powerful. So just having get to know you activities during the first week is really important, especially in an online course. So Mark, I'm so grateful that you're going to show us how you do that.
And I noticed there was a couple questions about, well, someone made a statement about video making us human, and I completely agree. And so I likely will go back and on my first about your instructor, I'm going to post a brief video. I'm just not sure how frequently I will have me sort of speaking to the class or sharing content or lecturing, simply because I'm not convinced that my students are going to have good access to strong internet that'll make that sort of possible and usable. So the class introduction incorporates a couple of features, tilt features that I don't have on some of the other assignments that another instructor shared recently. So here I provide sort of a purpose for the introductions, and I enumerate the instructions. Introduce yourself, identify one strategy you've used to be successful in Canvas or another online system in the past. If you haven't learned online before, identify one fear, anxiety, or hope you have about this experience. And then I ask them to respond to one peer, and then I state you must post before you can see other responses. And I say that you'll earn up to 5 points for one post and up to 5 for your response. And I give them some strategies for success, which is read all the directions, give yourself time to read and respond, and maybe you might want to sort of draft your responses in Word or a Google Doc and then paste them. I give them a timeline, and I provide a model introduction. This is what I think a good introduction should look like. And so I give my name, what they can call me. I highlight an experience I had teaching in prison, which was a highlight. And then I sort of I share a low light, which is basically my whole high school experience and why. And then I give a strategy about one strategy I've used to be successful online. And so this is a way for us to, one, establish classroom norms, but also to be sharing things that other students have been doing in online classes that they found to be helpful or successful. So this is sort of like building on the making the most of Canvas. Somebody asked a question about making the most of Canvas and where those links go to. So if I could just back up, I don't know if that question can be asked again, but the making the most of Canvas are pages where I provide videos that they can watch within the page. And so if you were to download this, it's going to arrive at your class and it's going to land in your modules. And then you can move it and put the pages wherever you'd like the pages to be.
And Mark, we did have one of our e-learning directors did say, you know, that sometimes if you're uploading something from the Commons, it may not upload exactly the way it is, and so or exactly the way it is in your Canvas instance. And so one thing I did want to encourage everyone on the call is to ask your e-learning director if they have campus-specific introduction to Canvas materials that you can use and upload and edit. And yes, if you upload something from the Canvas Commons, then you can edit it yourself. So somebody's asking, yes, great question. But I also wanted to say that many of your, everyone's instance of Canvas looks a little bit different depending on how your campus has set it up. So you might want to reach out to your e-learning director and just ask what basic introduction to Canvas materials are available. Mark, does that make sense? Did I say that okay?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And Jill Widner states that she calls her syllabus quiz a syllabus scavenger hunt, and I might do the same because that does seem less threatening, and it makes it sound more fun.
I love that.
Thanks for that, Jill.
And just to let people know, it's 3 o'clock, and so if you have to go and you would like me to email you directly, that would be great. So just type your email into the chat and I will email you. And also for folks who have to leave and are saying thank you to Mark, you know, just feel free to say thanks to Mark. And maybe before you leave, if you type one thing you've learned or one thing that you're excited about, that would be great. And Mark, I know you have more things to show, so if you can stay and just maybe keep going, and
Yeah, absolutely.
folks,
I'll
yeah,
just cover week 2. I think that'll help.
okay, great. And people who can stay on, please stay. And to the person who just asked, why are we giving you the email? It's just so I can directly say, here's the link to the recording.
Jennifer, hello? Yeah.
Yes.
Hello?
You have you have echo going on? Okay, try again.
Okay, yeah, I do.
Eileen, do you want to type it into the chat?
Turn your speakers down.
Just, can you hear me now? Is there still an echo?
That's better.
That's better.
Okay, I keep putting things into chat. I mean, yeah, but I don't know how to send it to you. It just, I just put in my email address. And what do I mean, is it going up above with all the other comments or not?
It is. It'll be, yeah.
Yeah, if you just type into the chat and then just press enter, I think that will make sure that it gets into the chat. Does that make sense?
Okay, just hit enter.
Yeah. And I'm looking to see if it's coming in.
There it is. Or no, maybe not.
Let's see. Can you try again? Elaine, are you E. Chase at Green River? Is that you?
Well, in the last few minutes, if I can, I'll just sort of talk about how I moved from week 1 to week 2.
Thanks,
So
Mark.
I've provided a number of sort of ways that we engage in sort of connect in Canvas using just Canvas features in week 1. In week 2, I model much the same. In my sort of in the top module, I sort of say week 2 and the dates that I include under week 2, and then I have a page where I lay out very, very briefly what we did in the previous week and what we'll do this week. And each of the things are going to build on one another. So to begin with, I asked them to read and respond to chapter 3 in our textbook. It's a short chapter where they sort of learn this surface to depth reading strategy. I'm going to have them create a focus free write, which I don't have on the assignment yet, where I'll ask them a question about something they might have learned. And then I'm going to ask them to begin to sort of practice some of what, or apply some of what they learned in chapter 3 to 2 discussions, a discussion about a poem by Chinese poet Liu Xiaobo and a poem by New Mexico native Jimmy Santiago Baca. And I'm going to share those pages with you because I think there's ways to make these pages a little bit more dynamic. So here's how I organize this assignment. In the past, I might have sort of put my reading underneath a separate, I might have put the reading as a link or as a file, but I'm trying to create as few sort of pages or places to go in the module as possible. So I've instead just sort of in the task sort of linked to what I want them to read. This is a Word document that I've sort of copied from the book because I know many won't have the book in the first or second week. And so that makes fewer places for them to get lost. I provide an overview, a purpose, and then a task. And then what I've done is I've embedded a Google document here. What I'm asking them to do is analogize this concept of surface depth any way they sort of want or see fit to, and then identify analogies that the students have shared. This is very low stakes, I think, and fairly straightforward. And it's just another way for them to engage that doesn't look like a discussion post where I can collect ideas on a single page. And I provide instructions on how to embed a Google document like this in my notes. Then I also provide a very, very brief criteria or rubric about how they will earn their points for doing the activity. And I think students really appreciate the criteria, sorry, the rubrics. I found a video of, or an audio recording of the poem being read by another poet, and so I thought that would be valuable here. So I provide a brief background of the poet. I link to some articles about the poet in The Guardian. I sort of describe the purpose of the activity, and then I provide a task where I say, read the poem, and it's here as a PDF. listen to the poem being read out loud. Then I ask students to make a list of 3 things they think the readers would agree on after reading the poem just one time. And that's sort of this idea of a surface reading, which, as opposed to a sort of a deeper reading, which we're going to get into. This tends to be sort of a longer set of instructions than I usually have, but this is a more complex discussion. I provide them some strategies for success, a timeline, and I give them a model post as well, so they sort of have a sense of what I'm expecting. The next is very, very similar in structure and in form. I give background on Jimmy Baca. I used to live in New Mexico, so I just give some of my own sort of connections to him. I provide a picture, an image of the book I'm referring to, this book called Martine and Meditations on the South Valley. And then I provide purpose, which models the previous one, only it's a different poem. And then I ask them to participate in that discussion. And finally, there's one more podcast where I want them to listen to prisoners talking about the secure housing unit. And it's a similar sort of discussion. And I believe that might be all I asked them to do. Oh, and then I provide a sort of a, let me go back to modules. So for week 2, it's fewer activities, but I think it's a lot of content, and it sort of mimics what I would have done in the face-to-face class as well. So they're reading a text, they're applying that reading to 2 different poems they're going to read, and they're going to listen to an outside podcast that's going to prepare them for when we begin to read Orange is the New Black in the following week. And then I provide them an excerpt from another Jimmy Baca article, which is completely optional. And I organize that underneath documents or resource links. I provide these text headers within the module. And if people want, I can demonstrate how to, well, let me just show you. If I leave student view real fast, the way we create a module is going to the modules page and clicking add a module. And I can call this whatever I want, week 11. I can lock it until they've done, or I can lock it until such a specific time, or I can add other prerequisites, such as they must sort of do week 10's module before they do week 11. And this is helpful, I think, because I had a student last fall who seemed to want to get through like the first 5 weeks of material in one weekend, and she did not do well in doing so. And I reached out to her and said, slow down. And I thought I should have just maybe blocked some of the modules, but I wanted to give students also a sense of what they're in for over the course of the quarter. So, and then once I've added the module, it should appear at the bottom of the screen. And then I can begin to add content to it. I have to click publish to make it live. The green check marks indicate that the module is visible to students. And then I can begin to add content, such as I might start with a page where I might lay out this week's activities. And that might sit at the top, make that live. And I would then open the page and put that content on it. And then I would follow with maybe a header for assignments and a header for additional resources. And I do have the podcast embedded in the assignment, yeah. And that was it was fairly easy to do. The podcast website allowed me to do that, and I thought it was really good.
Hey, Mark, is this appropriate to just ask 2
Absolutely, yeah.
quick follow-up questions? So one is, what's the difference, and sorry, I know this is going back a smidgen, but Sharon asked, what's the difference between introduce yourself to your peers and introduce yourself to your instructor assignments?
Oh, very true. I have played around with the idea of writing letters to students where I kind of lay out, where basically I hand a letter I've written to every student in the class where I've sort of put their name in it, and I said, "Dear so-and-so, welcome to the class," you know, and I'm playing around with doing something similar this quarter, where I'll email letters to students before they begin, and so it's sort of like a follow-up to that, where I ask students to upload a picture, and I want to know a little bit about them, such as this helps me sort of see how they write, because this is likely something they're not going to have another peer or friend sort of write. And so then I can always use this early writing to compare to later essays in case I am faced with an essay that I think might be plagiarized. quite frankly. But also, I'd like to know something about my students. And so I asked them to introduce themselves, why they're taking the class, a personal goal for the class, what they like to read, if anything. And so it's just a way for them to practice a tool inside Canvas, uploading information into a text box or typing into a text box. And then it's sort of different information than what they're going to share with their peers. So I'm learning both from what they share with their peers and what they're learning or what they're sharing with me. So I get sort of a fuller picture of the student.
Mark, thank you so much. And I think the other thing that someone asked was, so are you going to, when these are a little bit more finalized, will you post these to the Commons so that people can see your welcome page and your modules for models?
Sure, yeah, I'd be willing to. Yeah. And someone asked a question about, was the Google Doc embedded? It really is. And so students can do the work right in there. The risk, of course, is that someone could erase things. And I've used this in the past, and that's never happened. But I can begin to type right into the page, and it will remain there. I'm just gobbledygook, but so students will just come to the page and type. It'll happen in real time. So it might be that several students are posting at the same time. And students will all post into the same Google Doc, yeah. And I don't know if this will create issues or not. If two students arrive at the same moment and are typing the same box, that could be problematic. It's never been an issue before, but I'm hoping that it won't be. And I provide instructions for this in the handout. It's called Embedding Google Docs or Forms into Canvas, and they're very straightforward instructions.
Mark, thank you so much. We were just about to say the exact same thing, and I was like, and there's instructions in the handout.
Yeah.
Mark, there's one other question about you. So I think you said that you have a link to a chapter in here. Is that right?
I do. I basically I have the vital source books allow me to sort of. So I took the book, the author. And I used to work for this company, so I know they'll be okay with it. And so I do that. So basically, students can have access to the first bits of information because I know that many won't have the book already.
Hey, Mark, I'm so sorry. You cut out a little bit. And so do you mind just saying that again? So so this isn't open source, but you do have textbook,
It's not
you have
open source.
permission?
I have sort of, yes, I have permission to do so.
Okay. I think somebody was asking, like, how do I, like, so that someone was trying to take a chapter and turn it into, like, scan it as a PDF, but then it was inaccessible. And so I guess I just wanted to say for folks, like, so Mark, you were in the textbook industry, and so you, like, so I guess what I'm saying is, like, if people are trying to upload materials from copyrighted texts into their Canvas shell, I just wanted to urge folks to make sure you work with your librarians, because fair use is, like, I guess what I'm just saying is, if you're going to be uploading copyrighted text, check with your librarian to make sure that you're not in copyright violation, because I would hate to see somebody, get sued or get in trouble. Does that make sense?
Well, they may also have resources that you can use, or your college may even have the information that you want to post licensed.
Absolutely. And you can also just simply reach out. If I'm using a book the students are either buying the print book or the ebook, but I could also reach out to the local publishing rep and say, my students aren't going to have the book until week 2. May I post the first chapter? And I'll probably get an email that says absolutely yes, and that works. I used to do as much when I worked for a publisher.
Mark, thank you so much. And this is why I love these activities, because all the things I would never have thought to ask, and then all the information. And also Jerry, was that you, Jerry?
That was me.
Hi, Jerry. Jerry is, and Jerry, I'm just totally blanking. You're from Moses Lake.
No, Columbia Basin.
Columbia Basin. There we go.
Close to Moses Lake.
Yes. An e-learning director extraordinaire. So thank you so much for weighing in as well.
Sure. Usually people confuse my college with Lower Columbia since we have both have Columbia in the name.
The
So,
two Columbias. Yes, yes,
so
absolutely.
Big Bend is a new one to be confused with.
Thank you so much. And Mark, back to you. Sorry about that.
So on that note, if I was to upload some of my first week's modules, I may not have permission to do that with for this particular chapter for everyone to sort of see in that fashion. But I do have another class that's organized very similarly that and it's my English 236 creative writing class that I do the sort of same format where I provide, it's organized by week and assignments with discussions, and it's very, very similar in its scope and content. And I'm happy to sort of share that, and I'll make that available, and I can sort of put a link to that in the document that people have.
Mark, thank you. And someone else is asking if you would mind showing us the weighted grade in assignments.
Absolutely, yeah, that makes sense. I should have done that earlier. So if I go to, and this was sort of a game changer for me when I figured out I could do this. So if I go to assignments, which I have access to, so students can do my assignments, but they don't have access to the entire assignments page because it looks messy. I have things here that are published and unpublished. But if I go up to, where is it? Assignments group weight, or assignment groups weight. Imported assignments are assignments I found from other classes that I've taught. Those aren't worth anything. Those are just things I've imported, and I'll move them into the right place. Major writing assignments are my annotated bibliography and my 3 major writing essays, or my major essays. I used to weigh participation heavily in the face-to-face class. I'm going to change that up for now in my online class, but this is how typically I'd organize it. Then the in-class assignments are those sort of low-stakes discussions and brief reading responses that I have them do throughout the quarter. I call that in-class assignments and homework. And so I can set these any way I want. And then they're organized in this fashion. So I have in-class assignments and homework underneath this header. If I scroll down, it's a lot of stuff, but then you'll see the participation is broken up into first 5 weeks, second 5 weeks. And then the major writing is here. Well, a couple of essays, a seminar, and an annotated bibliography all fall underneath the major writing assignments. And I really like organizing it this way. It makes it so much easier at the end. I hope that helps.
I think it does.
Like
There's a great one in here about any ideas of how to assess participation in an online class.
I'm thinking of doing away with it entirely, Sharon. I'm thinking of going to kind of and it's a lot of work to do prior to Monday, but I'm thinking of sort of doing something more like sort of a grading contract or a labor-based model where I will let students know what they need to achieve an A, a B, or a C, and have that sort of be a guide. But one way that when I'm in a class with students, I can click on, let me see if this is possible for, I can click on the name of the student, and usually I can sort of see their activity, like how many page views, the amount of time they spent in the class, and it gives me a sort of a sense, it gives me a sense of one level of participation. Then the other level of participation obviously is how well they're engaging in discussions and the complexity of their responses and how comprehensive their responses are. And so sometimes if someone says, hey, I like this thesis, it's a good thesis, I know that that's not strong participation. I want specifics. And so I ask them questions about why and how is it a good thesis. I want them to sort of, I use prompts that hopefully get at more specific, strong responses. So that's one way you could sort of approach participation in online classes. It could be what Canvas provides you, and the analytics are somewhat good, but then you might also just maybe put all of your discussions and make all your discussions as part of the participation grade if you want to value that. And one thing I've noticed is that my English language learning students really, I think, come alive in discussions more so than they might in a classroom. Many of my students tend to be, many but not all, are reticent to talk in a group or in an entire class, but they will happily, or say happily, they all seem to sort of participate evenly and about the same in an online discussion.
Mark, this is great, and I did want to say people are typing into the chat. Thanks for the ideas. This was most helpful. And it looks like there's a question for Jerry. Jerry, if you're still here, do the analytics take into account students logged into our class on Canvas through multiple devices?
So that's a good question, which I can't totally answer. So the analytics in the past, mobile devices using the Canvas app did not capture all the activity. They do it does capture logins and things like that. I'm not certain about the current state though.
It's good to know, Jerry. Thank you. That's a good reason to maybe rethink how I use those analytics.
Thank you.
It'd be something to verify. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jerry, thank you. I know it's interesting how much we learn just by like what people ask and then having different people on the call. So I'm so grateful. I didn't know that either. So Mark, is there anything else that you think is important for us to see right now? Or do you feel
Well, if Carol's still on the phone, Carol Neffinger, if he had a question or a comment, I'd love to know if I could help him, since he's a colleague who lives down the hall from me.
Oh, okay, great. Carol, are you still here? I'm looking. Yeah, Carol's still here. Carol, do you want to speak, or you could type into the chat, whatever you want?
There we go. No, my question was answered. You sent me the link to the documents, and further down in the document, it listed how to add these external apps redirect in order to set up the side. So
I really like the redirect. And Carol, I think that the redirect is how we have the home and library there and the tutoring services.
Right.
It has to be that's why they're there. And so I just sort of created a new instance of it to do the virtual assistants and the reading and writing center online.
Yeah, the only thing though is in the shell that I have, the redirect is not there. I have to go and add it specifically.
Yeah, yeah. And it won't work for some websites. And so if I click on, well, any of these things, like the home and library, this is the Green River Library, it will appear inside Canvas, which I like. I just think it's sort of, I don't know if the word is elegant, but it doesn't sort of make students jump outside of this box or that they're in. But other websites won't play nice with Canvas, and it won't necessarily work.
No, I set it up to force it out into a new tab.
Oh, okay. No, that's another good way of doing it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Carol.
That was super fun. Does anyone else want to? Carol, thank you for turning on your video real quick. And Erin Mommer, hello, hi. Erin and I have known each other for many, many years. Erin, it's nice to see you. Are there other folks who maybe want to speak a question? Like you could take the mic or type into the chat, but is there anything that's unresolved that we could address now?
I know there are people who are teaching in aviation and other disciplines that I don't know how helpful my content was, but hopefully some of the organizational stuff was useful for you. I strongly recommend people visit Canvas Commons and also just sort of Google questions, because there's a lot of stuff out there that might be able to meet your needs.
Yes, and also the state board is putting together communities of practice for some of these areas. Like, I don't know if anyone is familiar with the term, technical problem versus adaptive challenge, but a technical problem means that there's a best practice that addresses it, like the problem is clearly defined, and an adaptive challenge means that there isn't necessarily a best practice because it's so emergent and so sunny for allied health, with clinicals, for a lot of the STEM folks with labs. These are really adaptive challenges because there aren't necessarily established practices for doing this. So the state board is putting together communities of practice so faculty can kind of learn how to do this together. I definitely don't think like we can ever, like there was a flying instructor who was like, I'm gonna miss flying. And I was like, you know, like again, like we can't make it perfect, but we can, I think, build something together. So we'll be reaching out with more information about the communities of practice to support folks in allied health, people who are doing clinicals, prof tech. Oh, Sharon, how will we hear about that? For everybody who just sent me their emails, I'll be in touch. But also we will, we'll be just putting it on blast through all the listservs. So we will definitely be sharing more information about that through emails. And there also the link that I sent you guys that has the link to the Student Success Center COVID-19 resources. There'll be information about the communities of practice there as well. And also Mark, Keith has a question about Google Voice. And before you answer that, I just want to say to Jill Widner, Jill, thank you. I think you're a terrific resource. I'm really grateful to you for coming to all these and asking such great questions. And thanks for attending. Mark, sorry, go ahead about Google Voice.
What was the question? Is it posted? Oh,
sorry.
So yeah, Google. So I see it, Mark. So Google Voice. Let me, if I could, just share my screen again really fast. Google Voice allows for you to basically get a phone number from Google, and you can give that to your students rather than sort of sharing your own cell phone number. And so I just simply went to Google Voice, and it takes me to my site already. And so basically, it gives you a number. You get to choose a number. I mean, because all the Seattle numbers and all where I live and all the Auburn numbers were chosen. I chose an area code from San Diego where I grew up. And so it basically gives you a phone number and allows for people to call you and text you at that number. So it's very similar to having a Gmail account. It's just sort of something that Google provides. You get a phone number, and it's pretty cool. And I can share that on my syllabus. And
you can set it up to forward to.
Oh, right. Yes.
To your regular phone or to multiple phones. I'm not sure how that works with the text, but definitely the voice will forward.
And that's a good point to make. Yeah. So I did that almost automatically. So this number 858-309, it forwards to my cell phone. And so I get calls on my cell phone from that, but they don't have my personal number.
Mark, can you say that number again to the tune of 8675309?
I
can't. Really quickly, I think Jill has just a quick question about, does the Google number come to your own cell phone?
And it does. Yeah, that's just what I think Jerry was saying. It does. You basically give it, you create a number, and then you tell it where you want it to go.
You can actually have it ring multiple phones, I believe. So like you could have it ring your cell phone or your landline, and if you don't answer there, it'll ring your cell phone. Or I think, gosh. I mean, I haven't done it. I haven't messed with it in a long time, but it used to do that. So yeah.
Jill says one is enough. We've been rewatching old episodes of The Office, and there's one office where one of the characters has an idea called Woof, and like basically like it makes all of your devices ring, including a fax. So I'm just thinking about that. Yeah, and also it's free, as Mark just wrote out in the chat. And also, Mark, I do want to read one comment to you from Rob Vansel. Rob, thank you for this. You had a lot of good tips. I wish I was taking your prison lit class. It looks fascinating. I know, me too, Rob. Isn't it great?
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Mark, your course looks amazing.
Mark, this is Keith. Again, a question about the Google Voice. Do you always have to change that number, or once you have that number, it's always connected to your phone?
Once you have it, it's always connected. I had another Google number a couple quarters ago, and I didn't utilize it, and so it basically warned me and said, if you don't use the number within 2 weeks, it's going away, and it did. And so I just created this new number at the end of winter quarter. And so as long as you're fairly active, I haven't had a call come to me. I guess I had one student call me at the end of the winter quarter, right after we ceased meeting face to face. I had one student reach out to me via Google Voice, actually two. So they don't tend to use it as much as I would have thought they did, but I think this time around they will.
Mark, thank you. And also, Jill just posted if you've thought about using Rachel Kushner's The Mars Room.
I haven't, but I'll check it out because I need to move beyond Orange is the New Black. I have issues using her book, but I think that I always assume students will have some familiarity with it, so it's a good way for me to begin to talk about class and privilege and issues such as that. But I then want to immediately get into the more interesting books. Not that she's not interesting, but anyway, yeah. So I'll check her book out.
Jill, I will too. And Jill, also, do you have any other, I know you're English faculty, do you have any other good COVID-19 stress relief books? I don't have any novels to kind of lose myself in. Sorry, everyone, I'm just going to be selfish for a minute. Actually, if anybody has a novel that I could lose myself in, I would really appreciate it because I've been waking up at 3 a.m. just like stressed out and anxious and I can't soothe myself. So if anyone has a, if anyone has, oh, I see recommendations coming in. So please type your recommendations into the chat and I will be forever grateful. Oh, Washington Black, thanks, Mark. And Carolyn Willis from Hilla, thank you. So while people are just finishing up, I did want to say, Mark, thank you again so much. And I meant what I said, like I was very unsure about how to lead professional development in this pandemic and also how to be responsive, how to address emergent needs. And I just from that very first comment when you were during that DEI discussion facilitated by Vic Ball, when you were like, people just need to keep it simple, although you said it more elegantly and wisely than that. And I was like, yeah, that's what they need. And I just so appreciate you being a thought partner and also putting together such thoughtful presentations for us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that it's at times it might even seem too simplistic, and I hope that I'm able to keep students interested and that it's dynamic enough for them. But I also want to not lose students with learning curves related to various technology and such. And while Canvas is just really an empty shell, it has enough features in it that I can do what I need to do for a literature class and a writing class.
Mark, yeah, I just think during this time, you know, we're all going to be kind of like doing experiments, and I think less is more, you know, and just the way you have these really great assignments, and again, like it'll be a balance. We'll all figure out, you know, what's too much, what's too little.
Yeah. And there's a lot of great videos out there. There's often, depending on your discipline, there's videos that are written by a particular group, so they all have the same sort of look about them. And so I'm going to use this Nature of Writing video collection to sort of augment my class. So this first one I'm sharing is using clustering to organize ideas, and they've got others related to other aspects of essay writing that I'll include along with textual content to make it sort of accessible to a greater number of students.
Yes. Yeah, and Mark, thanks actually for that tip too about the discipline specific, lots and lots of video resources. That is super great. And just using, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's great. This is great. And Sharon says, thank you for all the teacher presence. This was a very useful webinar. And Jill is giving us some really great some text recommendations. Jill, I'm so grateful for those. I'm really glad I have access to, well, everyone will have access to the chat. And Tristine says, thanks for reminding me to kiss for everyone's sanity. Yes.
Thanks, Tristine. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you again, Mark. Oh, Jennifer Lawson says this is one of the best trainings she's ever attended. Thanks, Jennifer. It's fun to see what smart, brilliant, compassionate people are doing. And Mark, that's you. All right, everyone, I am going to stop recording.